Nothing around here.
I was
Okay.
looking to see if I
Now
had
we're
any red nearby, but I don't.
Yeah, I don't either.
A lot of blue in my house, not a lot of red.
Yep. All right. Are we live, Mike?
Yeah, we're live.
Okay, great. Thanks. I'd like to call to order the May 5th regular meeting of the Chagrin Falls Board of Education. Ms. Brudno, if you please take the roll.
Mr. Rankin,
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey,
Here.
Mrs. Bendel,
Here?
Mrs. Bros,
Here?
Mrs. O'Toole.
Here.
All right, fantastic. If you could all join me in finding an local American flag and saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you very much. First order of business, we will go through, if I could have a motion for the approval of minutes of April 7th, 14th, and 21st of this year.
So moved.
Second.
All right, thank you. Any discussion on those minutes? Any adjustments? All right, seeing none. Ms. Brudno, if you'd please take the roll.
Mr. Rankin,
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mrs. Bros,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have the board participation committees. So with Mr. Kanzinger resigning from the board and Ms. Bendel coming on, we readjusted some of the assignments. Ms. Bendel took on most of them. I had the fewest of anybody else, so I took on a few of the other ones that Greg had. Technology committee, for example, for one, boosters, and I think Dad's Club. I think that was it. So hopefully you've had a chance to review the list that we have there. Anybody have any other discussion about that list?
The only thing I'd like to point out, seeing as we just updated policy about Business Advisory Council, we kind of have that on here twice. We have Business Advisory Council and Business Advisory Committee. We could probably just take that to one thing, and I think it's a council, but we can worry about that next year if we want.
Gotcha. Okay.
So we have the board committee, the Business Advisory Council. Is that right, Mary Kay? That's the board one. And then
Correct.
the superintendent's committee was it was a different one. I don't know if it's been convening with COVID, but that was where Bob would invite local business owners to consult with the district about curriculum and just hear updates
Okay.
about what we were doing.
Yeah.
So they were two separate ones.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's keep it. But
Yeah, I would suggest that committee stay in place.
Okay.
Some pretty engaged individuals meet a couple of times a year and remain, connected to the district. I think it's a good thing.
Great.
Okay. So then I guess if we could have a motion to accept that, we need to motion and say, do we need to vote on accepting that list, Ashley?
I don't believe so. I don't believe we did that in the organizational meeting. I thought it was just a.
I agree. I think in our governance manual, it has that the president appoints the committee members. So I don't think it requires a vote.
Okay. Congratulations.
You
Ms.
could
Bendel, you're
put
appointed.
one board member on all of them if you wanted.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it doesn't look like we did it at the org meeting.
All right. Very good. We'll consider Ms. Bendel appointed. Congratulations. Moving on, we'll do the board committee updates. Mrs. O'Toole, if you wouldn't mind with the audit and board policy committee.
Okay. This will is an easy one. No report for the audit committee or the policy committee.
Fantastic. Next up, Mrs. Garvey, Business Advisory, Capital Planning, and Board Finance and Budget.
Right. So no report on business advisory or capital planning. As you know, we just had a meeting last month. But for the Board Finance and Budget Committee, we do have a meeting coming up, which is next week on May 11th at 6 o'clock. And that will also be broadcast via Zoom.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And records retention, we have no update at this meeting. And next up, Dr. Hunt, the superintendent's reports. I will turn the floor over to you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Just 2 reports this evening. First of all, I want to, before I jump into extend my gratitude to our teaching staff, I want to start with our PTO. They do so much on a regular basis, but this week it is extremely visible as they, feed our staff, are there doing events, supporting them. And, we're just very fortunate to have such a supportive PTO that works collaboratively with us and supporting our staff. It is National Teacher Appreciation Week. Actually, the day was officially yesterday. It's always the first Tuesday in May. And it just provides you an opportunity to reflect upon teachers and all that they do kind of at a national level and locally. We talked about this last week with, the approval of the extension of the contract. We are just very fortunate to have such quality, committed teachers working with our kids every single day. And COVID has brought to light many, many things. But I think one of those things is the commitment to doing what is best and right for students and being able to go above and beyond. So I just wanted to take a moment tonight to thank all of our teachers for all that they do for the students of Sugar Land Falls. So I wanted to extend that and make that, let people know publicly. It's a great week to drop a note in a backpack or in a folder and send along the way and thank a teacher. So thanks for everything that they do. The second item on my reports this evening is a presentation by Mrs. DeSenza and Ms. Asher from the 712 with a modification proposal for the Bell schedule moving into the 21-22 school year. They have been working kind of collaboratively with staff on this over the last couple of months. We've continuously, talked about, in crisis, there lies opportunity and what things that we learned along the way through COVID can we pull forward and potentially make us, kind of better going forward. And I think this is, one of those items as they have brought together kind of a mixture of a traditional schedule with a block and probably called modified block schedule, and want to walk through it with the Board of Education and answer any questions that you have. As we're well into scheduling at this point with students and need to kind of finalize this decision moving forward. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to them. I thank them for being here this evening. And certainly as we go through, if you have questions, feel free to jump in.
Thank you. We are really excited to present to you tonight. A lot of work and thought has gone into this proposal. After a very challenging year full of a lot of change, there is certainly an inclination to go back to normal. And we worked with the high school and middle school BLTs, and they willingly, and we're excited to tackle evaluating a potential Bell schedule change for next year. We learned some valuable lessons, as Dr. Hunt said, this year, and they did not want to wait to address the challenges we've seen in the past, or kind of wait on those lessons that we've learned, and they really dove into this process. We are really, really lucky to work with teachers who, despite their many successes, are never satisfied, and they constantly want to find ways to be better and do more. And I think this is certainly a representation of that. As far as Layla and I are concerned, we want to foster innovation and find ways to be more flexible and creative with the students. And we recognized throughout this process that if we simply went back to the old schedule without giving our lessons an honest look, we would continue to face the same constraints and problems that we faced prior to the pandemic, and that was really unacceptable for us. So we want to continue to explore the flexibility and innovate, and we think that this schedule is going to allow us to really explore some of those options. So Mike, if you can go ahead to the next slide. So tonight we're going to talk to you about our process that we went through with this, the feedback that we received from parents, from students, from staff, provide you with the specifics of the schedule, and then and how it will impact the high school, how it will impact the middle school. And then Mike is actually going to close out with information about the flexible learning pilot, where if you recall, prior to the pandemic, this was something that we really wanted to tackle. And we have, even more skill and ability to tackle some of those things now. So he's going to update you on that progress. So we were pretty split at the high school with regard to the staff as to whether or not staff would prefer a block day or a traditional 8-period day, but I think they did a really great job engaging in the evaluation of the pros and cons of both models. So I want to talk to you a little bit about what we saw as the benefits of the larger block days, the challenges that we've seen with those, very honestly, as well as the pros and cons of what we saw with a traditional 8-period day schedule. So looking at the benefits that we've seen from the block days this year, opportunities for more labs and authentic learning. So being able to have that extended amount of time in the classroom really allows teacher to dive into the rigor and engage students authentically. Students reported to us feeling a lot less stress in the block model, due to the homework load. When you only have to really consider or worry about 4 classes a day as opposed to 8, it feels like there's a lot less that you have to balance and juggle. And as many of you know, we have students that balance and juggle so many different activities. So to be able to feel less stressed was really, really important for us to consider as we move forward. There were opportunities for students to receive extended support. So any of our students who are at risk academically, they were able to really kind of hone in and work with teachers where they had struggles for an extended period of time. There were opportunities for every student to receive in-depth, individualized feedback, especially in larger class periods. When you evaluate a schedule that only maybe has 40 or 50 minutes within a period, and you have 25 students that you need to get to, you may not be able to spend an extended amount of time with each student and provide really in-depth feedback. It may end up being a little more on the surface level. So this provided us the opportunity to do that with each student far more frequently. And then with the block schedule, Open Campus is more accessible, especially for our upperclassmen who can drive. The ability to have that flexibility in schedule, to be able to go home at lunch, especially if they may have a long night of practices, or for our students that want to hold jobs. It provides them the ability to do those things. Now, with the benefits, we've certainly seen some challenges as well. Teachers would not have, with the block schedule, teachers would not have the ability to touch base with students 5 days a week. So the ability in a traditional 8-period day, you see every student every single day. And being able to touch base every day with kids is really important. A flexible schedule, we found sometimes, especially as we had to go through some changes and adjustments during the year, was challenging for students who struggled with executive functioning or attention. And then we also recognized that, as we started this year, our teachers did an awesome job planning and preparing, but we would need to provide staff with more professional development. And they want to be able to explore more of the benefits of the block. So that's something that we would really need to plan for next year. So looking at the pros and cons of an 8-period day, there are certainly, like I said, benefits to the 8-period day as well. So teachers have the ability to see their students every day of the week. Something that we talked about, a challenge before with the block. There's less fatigue. It is easier for, maybe some of our students to maintain attention during a shorter period of time. Consistency in the daily schedule. So knowing that every day you have, exactly what time to go to because the schedule looks the same, and not having to kind of stop and think about, all right, which period do I have at this time? That certainly was a benefit for kids. And of course, we've demonstrated that we can be successful in that model. And knowing that you can have success and that you have experienced success, it sometimes can make you more hesitant to change. So looking at the challenges of an 8-period day, so instructional time is lost to transitions, especially for teachers who have labs or multiple preps. So when we look at our world language department, in a small school, many of our teachers will teach 4 or 5 different courses throughout the day. When we look at our art teachers or lab-based classes, when you have the setup and tear down a shorter period, you're going to lose all of those transition times. And in trying to build the master schedule, we build it each year by hand based on student requests. And so to fulfill those requests, we can't typically stack all like classes at the same time. So we wouldn't be able to put 4 chemistry periods in a row so that setup and tear down would be easier. That's a bit challenging with an 8-period day. So the longer days, we do gain actually more instructional time because we don't lose that to transitions. Challenges, again, students talked about having responsibilities for every class, every day can be overwhelming and stressful. There's far less time for labs and authentic learning experiences. And then open campus and more flexible learning models may not be possible just because of the shorter time to leave and come back to campus. So we wanted to talk with you and provide you with some specifics about what students and parents reported throughout this. So if you remember, the district earlier this year sent out a survey to parents about their experiences with pandemic learning, what they thought about the Bell schedule, and open campus, all of the different facets of things that we were offering. And our teachers also engaged our students in conversations about what they thought about different models of learning this year. And here are some of the things that they had to say. So many students talked about kind of the college aspect of it. And as we know, we have such a high population of students that go on to post-secondary education. A lot of them said it gives us more responsibility and freedom with open campus. I also like that we usually get an extra day to do homework, so the workload feels more manageable. It's nice practice for what the world after high school will be like. For our students in our Performing Arts Academy, this is how the academy works. And I love the experience and lessons I've learned. I also don't feel as overwhelmed like I've felt in the past. And then from a parent, moving to a flexible schedule has made my child more prepared for life after high school. It helps him with time management, helps him learn more by getting deeper into topics, and has made him much more responsible. I hope we keep the flexibility for next year. Juniors and seniors having the ability to come and go as needed has been wonderful. My son has gotten to do all of his essay tutoring during the school hours off campus, and that has freed up more time for him to pursue other interests. So here are some of the things that the faculty also had to say as we evaluated a flexible model. As much as I dreaded the block this year, I have come to really like it and have seen the benefits of it both for the teacher and the student. Talking with students, the one main recurring comment about the positive impact of the block schedule is the amount of homework they have now and how they feel it is more manageable this year than in years past. With our students who are engaged and enrolled in various activities, I think this allows them more me time. And I think this is critically important as we talk about stress reduction and mental health and the social emotional impact on our students. The flexible learning pilot, which Mike will talk about later, is an important avenue we want to develop. In order to do that well, I believe longer blocks in an open campus are crucial for us to have more maneuverability with blended learning. A flexible schedule enables us to offer students who need more support with executive functioning, to teach them skills, to go through assignments with students, provide workshops, lessons designed to support students with social emotional support. It also provides us time for students to work on service learning projects. We have more ability to offer support outside of the traditional classroom. So, I think one of the themes that you're seeing is that if we look at a more flexible schedule, students have a lot more flexibility to pursue all of the things that they want to pursue. And with our students highly involved in so many other activities, that's really an avenue that we would like to pursue. So looking at kind of the pros and cons, what we did is we really ended up leaning towards a combined model. So having some days in the model that are block days, and then some days in the model that are 8-period days. So really trying to get the best of both worlds here. So it provides us the opportunity for extension, labs, and creativity. We can still maintain, however, frequent contact with students. And so what you'll see that we're proposing would be 3 days of an 8-period schedule and then 2 days of a block schedule. So being able to see students 4 days a week, we get that frequent contact that I know, our math department believes is important. Our world language department, certainly, it is important for them. A more flexible schedule gives us potential for more flexibility within offerings. We are very lucky to offer so many different courses at the high school, but that can be a challenge when you only have one section of a class and building that master schedule. So being able to have a little more flexibility of where we can schedule students will have a higher outcome for us as far as that master schedule fill rate is concerned. Open campus, again, is more manageable for students on a block. It truly gives us the best of both models with really lessening the negatives. So as we looked at kind of where some of those negatives were on the 8-period day versus a 4-period day, having the combination of both, we were able to strike a balance where we felt we were able to develop and highlight more of the positives and lessen those negatives. It provides us the opportunity to explore and evaluate both models in a COVID-free environment. A block period looks vastly different in a non-COVID environment than it does in a COVID environment. And so we recognize that it's really hard to evaluate the effectiveness of a block period truly when you have to sit in a desk behind a plastic barrier for 80 to 90 minutes. That's not what we want to see in the classroom. That's certainly not what teachers want to see. So we want the ability to really stretch our legs in some block periods away from COVID, because then we can have an honest evaluation of what we can do within those block periods. We also added a 3-day-a-week Tiger period, advisory period, and some opportunities for advisory on those Tuesday and Wednesday block days that you will see here when we go to the next slide. And so it allows the middle school to meet that philosophy of everyday advisory, and then allows us at the high school to be more flexible with students and allow them to seek out the individual feedback that they need. So to get down to the nitty-gritty of what the actual schedule will look like, and then we will go through kind of what you can see as far as lunch is concerned, and talk about some of those. So we looked at having a Monday 8-period day with Tiger period, and then Thursday and Friday following those same schedules. So on those days, our lunch periods, which we'll talk about in a little bit, would be broken down into 2 periods, so over 4th and 5th period. We did move Tiger period. In our previous schedule, it was after 2nd period. We moved it to after third period because it made the transition time for Excel tech students much, much better. So as we saw kids from programs that were coming back and forth, they would not have to miss pieces and parts of class as they did previously when we had Tiger period after second period. On the Tuesday and Wednesday schedule, our biggest challenge that we needed to tackle was how we were going to handle lunch. So if you have lunch over fifth period one day and lunch over fourth period the other day, what does that look like? And how can you utilize that time? So we added a lunch period in the middle of the day, similar to what you would see on some of our block days now. And then we moved the fourth period and the fifth period to the end of the day on Tuesday and the beginning of the day on Wednesday. So what that does is, because half of our students are scheduled into that fifth period on Tuesday, and then half of them have class fifth period, and then the same with fourth period. So the other half of the students have a fourth period scheduled on that day and the other half would be off. It gives us an opportunity to have a late start and an early release for students. So this is something that we've talked about in the past within our building, as far as having the ability built into the day to offer professional development for teachers, to offer programming for students that we really desperately need, for college and careers, for social emotional learning, and to be able to do that without pulling students away from their classes or their Tiger period. You know, historically, when we've had to kind of pull students out for programming, it can be a bit frustrating for staff because they may have some students missing some day and not the other days. We also found that when we utilized Tiger period for programming in the past, you know, for larger group programming, our students were a little frustrated with us. They've come to really enjoy Tiger period in a traditional schedule because they're able to seek individual feedback from their teachers. As much as some of our academic labs are really helpful, our kids want to see their own teachers that they have on their schedule. So this provides that. The other thing that we did within this, and this is demonstrated on the next couple of slides, but I want you to be able to really kind of take this in before we move to those and reiterate that, is historically in our master schedule, our teachers have had common plan time. So our math department all have had their plan period first period, you know, third period. Our social studies department had all of their plan time. So that was a bit challenging and really gave us a lot of constraints with the master schedule. It's important for our teachers to be able to meet and plan together, to review data. But if, you know, all of your math teachers are not available first period, then you can't schedule any math classes first period. So we moved away from common plan and we actually put all of our departments in common lunch. So all of our math department would have a common lunch during fifth period, or all of our social studies department might have a common lunch during fourth period. So then during that Tuesday and Wednesday time, because the entire department, specific departments have lunch together during that end of the day period or the beginning of the day, we're able to give them the PD that they need. And I'll talk about what that looks like a little bit next year. We're able to really meet as a group and evaluate data, evaluate what we're doing curricularly with our students. And all of that is really, really important for us to be able to achieve at the level that we want to achieve. These times too, where students maybe had lunch scheduled during fourth or fifth period, but now they would have a late start or early release, those are also times where we can then pull students in for programming. So when we talk about trying to find time during the day to do career and college programming for students to really kind of go in depth to that more, and we know that that's a need that we certainly have, to look at social emotional programming. This allows us to do all of those things that benefit students without pulling them out of specific classes and really maintaining more continuity within their schedule. So Mike, if you can, and we can come back to this kind of after we go through. So this reiterates a lot of kind of what I said earlier. So on the Monday, Thursday, and Friday, lunch would go back to what you've seen similarly in the past. So 11th grade and 12th grade students would have that double lunch period. And then our freshmen and sophomores would have a lunch study hall. So half of the lunch period, they would be in the commons, and then the other half, they would be in a study hall. And again, on block days, lunch is held at a common time for the entire building. And then those 4th and 5th periods become a late start or early release for students who previously had lunch scheduled during one of those periods. 7th and 8th grade students, as Layla will talk a little bit more, will have lunch recess during a full period on Monday, Thursday, and Friday, and during block time on Tuesday and Wednesday. The late start and early release, again, this provides us additional time for students to seek intervention, as well as for us to provide social emotional learning programming and career and college and career readiness programming. So the counseling department has rolled out, and I think many of you may have seen this, SCORE this year, which will replace Naviance. And as we begin to utilize that, not only is it much more user-friendly for parents and students, but there are a lot of different opportunities for us to engage them in more meaningful ways in the college or career process, which is something we really want to beef up at the high school. We will be able to work with our students on developing their executive functioning skills. This was a very big need that we saw certainly during the pandemic. So the ability to organize your time, to set goals and understand what you need to do to achieve those goals. All of the things that they would have to know how to do to really be successful in adulthood, this gives us an opportunity to build those skills in kids. We will be pushing out a social emotional survey, which we've done prior to the pandemic and have done with the kids thus far through Panorama. So we are going to be able to get some real-time data on what our students' social emotional needs are, and then develop programming that directly responds to those needs. Students and teachers, as I said earlier, have indicated that they would prefer to have meetings and programming scheduled as to not pull away from instructional time or tiger period. So if I have to pull students out of a class, you know, some kids might miss second period, some kids might miss fourth, and then they feel like they constantly have to catch up. So having that time scheduled in the week to be able for them to explore and get support they need that may fall outside of academics is really, really important. We've certainly seen, I think, not just in Chagrin, but across the country, the need for social emotional supports for students and how that has increased. So this gives us time to do those things. And then again, we eliminated common plan time from the schedule and gave teachers common lunch. So in doing that, teachers now have the ability to meet with their departments on those 4th and 5th period days. And a couple of the things that we really want to tackle next year as we look at professional development, OTES 2.0, which has been implemented in many districts so far across the state, but due to the fact that our contract expires, we will be implementing the new teacher evaluation system next year. One of those components is that we do have to develop and evaluate how we are going to look at student data. And that may look different at each building. And for the high school, we've begun to go down this road. When I first came to Chagrin, developing common assessments, looking at standards-based grading, looking at how we tackle grading and homework. So that provides us really great PD time to do those things. We also will really hone in on PD that shows, that helps our teachers utilize the block effectively as they want more information and more support in doing that. And then the last thing is looking at our RTI programming, so our response to intervention. How are we responding to students who struggle and may need extra support outside of the classroom? That is something that we've really begun to tackle this year, that we have kind of broken down and shifted our referral process. Now we have time to really be able to take that to that next level. And again, you know, with all of our students who are just amazingly ambitious and they want to take on some challenging schedules, we want to be able to provide a master schedule in which students can pursue all of their interests. So being able to have that flexibility in the BAL schedule allows us to be able to build a better master schedule for students.
Thanks, Monica. Monica shared a little bit about our collaborative background this year. I've been working through our new schedule this year and discussing possible changes for next year, and shared a little bit about the high school. And to go into a little bit further detail about the middle school, there's been the two main driving factors when we're looking at the new type of block period versus the typical 8-period day. Having that time for students to really interact with their new knowledge, to deepen their knowledge, and receive time with their teachers, really individualized. On a daily basis, teachers might have to prepare to see over 100 students throughout the day and meet each of their needs. And on a block day, teachers can really feel more personalized with their students because they're meeting less students and having more time with them. It's just a richer time. But there's still something very important about checking in with your students daily and making sure that they feel that they're on top of their needs and their resources as they're moving through their week. And putting those two pieces together has really helped us as we're creating the schedule for next year. So some of the main decisions when we think about instruction and into the classroom is really the motivation for feedback and how that really helps the teachers and the students in the classroom. So when we have the time to have a block schedule, we have the ability for students to really take complex knowledge and skills and work with it within that time period. It also gives them time to extend knowledge, to apply that in different areas, and to self-correct. Sometimes within an 8-period day, our feedback is there, which is so important because it guides our students not to have misconceptions, but we get to that next higher level when students have the ability to self-correct. And having that 90-minute block when set up within the classroom to have those transitions and activities gives students the time to do that. But also on a daily 8-period day, those real-time checks as they're moving through formative assessments are so very important. And so John Hattie has done a lot of studies on what gets us the highest effect on the factors of students in education. And their growth really comes back to the timely specific feedback that instructors are able to provide their students. So with that data, that's really driving the decisions to how we can better create our schedule to provide this environment for our students. So we need to look at time two ways. We want that time to be able to practice, to be able to explore, and to provide or receive feedback. But we also want the time to communicate with students daily and engage them at multiple exposures. So moving forward with this schedule that was outlined to you, it also provides time for some other periods in our day. And I think this is a really wonderful opportunity because as needs arise, we have to kind of always go back and see, well, where can this fit and how can we do this and how do we prioritize and where do we make changes? And what's really nice is over the years and through talking to our students and staff and community, we're starting to gather all those things that we need. And now we have the opportunity to then to build the schedule based on that instead of trying to fit it in places. So really knowing that we can align our curriculum, which is really strong and solid. And this could be something like with our CPM model that we use in math. You know, how do we take maybe certain units and match them together so that makes a really good block lesson? So it provides us time to kind of match that structure, but then also to put things in for our SEL supports, our interdisciplinary units, and our literacy components. So right now, literacy across all contents is so very important, and how can we dive deeper into that? and prepare our students? How can we do this for our interdisciplinary units? So for example, our science classrooms at the middle school, we're working on research projects and have the opportunity for the literacy component to come into classes, which can extend through advisory times to really learn that across curriculums. They have the time then through their advisory periods to work on this, to learn this. Our interdisciplinary units, as our boat regatta is coming up this year for 7th and 8th grade, and knowing that our students need so much support, whether it's money management or what we're doing in the classroom or how we're having empathy towards one another. All these things are so very important to the growth of all children, and especially the middle schoolers and the young adolescents. We're now building the time for that for them, knowing that it's a high priority. We also know too that we need to provide interventions for our students, and since all students are different, they're always so flexibly moving in and out of what they need. And having the ability to have different tiering models for that intervention, where we may have the students be able to get extra support from their classroom teacher, or we also may have the ability for them to get specific targeted instruction in an area that they need to grow in, and have them being able to move in through that. Again, instead of trying to pull them out of classes and fit that in, we're building this time in the day that can meet all of these different needs. We've talked a little bit about how the staff would have some development with some types of pedagogy. Our staff is phenomenal with the instruction that they provide students on a daily basis. I am always impressed with the quality of their lesson plans and the way that they execute it in the classroom. And they already have a really good foundation, but through collaboration can talk about different ways that you have transitions when you have a Block class, or the different activities for engagement, how we can really extend inquiry-based learning, and so many different models of cooperative learning. Things like that will just add to their tool belt and their repertoire to build a really rich classroom in a Block model. It provides time for our contents to talk, our department meetings. Through our language arts, we're recently starting the Lucy Calkins program. How are we aligning this so that we have time for students to really get into their choice novels, maybe on a block day? What would work better than when we're doing some model text? Would that work better on an 8-period day? So our departments would talk. Last year, our district leadership team really dove into the topics of homework and getting into retakes, and where that plays a role in our students' success and development, and having more discussions on that, because again, now we're getting into what we're doing within our 4 walls. What are we doing with our students when we're there to make it really, really meaningful? And does that have an effect then on the amount of homework or second chances our students will take because they're really interacting with us when we're there? We've used some of these things this year. And so when we're talking about those advisory periods or tiger periods, things that would happen in there, we've used our panorama data to really guide us as we are trying to make sure, as we check to see where our students, we survey them on how they're feeling about their school, their culture, their friendships, their teachers. And that data then drives what we do as a building and as a district. So it provides opportunities for us to survey the students and to really garner what they're thinking so that we can make quality changes for them. To provide advocacy for our students, we've talked to the board before a few years ago how our teachers are not just advisors, but advocates for our students, and how if they have a home base or that adult that they know they go to each day, that person can guide them through their learning at all the different levels, but especially in the middle school. Executive functioning skills, 7 through 12 students really need to learn that. We've seen that during our pandemic, and how many, there's different calendars and who likes it on paper and who likes it online, and really monitoring and managing your workload. And those are not always so intuitive for students. And it's important to give them those lessons and practice to help them to be successful. It provides us time for those interdisciplinary units. Right now we are working on our boat regatta, and how can that span throughout the years so that they are consistently working through that. To provide time for benchmarking, we use the iReady assessments 3 times a year at the middle school, and also in some of our classes in the middle school and beyond at the high school, the common assessments are used. And it's really important now that we've built that time for teachers to talk. And one of the best things they can talk about is after after they've given those assessments, where did they see each of their students? Where were they going? How did it turn out for each class? How can they make changes going forward? What kind of assessments do they need to kind of go back into their classroom and do and make those adjustments? So providing them not just with the staff the time to have those conversations at a 7-12 level, but also providing the time for the students to take the benchmarks exams so we can monitor their growth and make our changes appropriately. It provides us time for conferencing. One of the best things that we can do is have teacher-student conferences, not just where students lead it, but where they're reflecting on their growth and their needs and advocating for what would make them a stronger learner. And it provides time to do that. It also provides time for reading. Reading is very important, and our students are very, very busy. They're, on an 8-period day, they have 8 different classes. They go home to different musics and sports, and their families are very busy too. And homework is always very important, and reading sometimes could be something that they'll get to eventually because it might not be something that's graded that next day. And reading large amounts, it can really grow our students. So providing time for them to be able to do that outside of school is wonderful, but we know they're stretched so many ways. Providing some time for them to really have that choice novel to get matched appropriate at their level and be able to read multiple texts is really important and can be done during these advisory or tiger period times. We've talked many times about the importance of college and career readiness, and truly it spans over multiple years as our students are growing all the way up through high school. And it really does fall under the Ohio standards for counselors, that they will work directly with students to develop their college and career related knowledge, skills, and pathways. And what's really nice about this schedule is now we've provided access time for our counselors to be able to go in and to be able to work with students. At the middle school too, we've also worked with our teaching teams who feel very passionate about it as well. And with our counselor and the administration, we've come together to talk about what kind of important themes our students need to have as they are working their way through the middle school and high school to prepare them. And this then provides time for that. Many times throughout the year, teachers have said, I'll give, my social studies class next Friday. We can do money management that day, or when we take our PSATs, we can take it here. And so we've filled the time, but I think it's important for the students to know it is a priority for them and it's a priority for us. So we've built that time in the schedule. And it isn't something that happens here and there. It's something that we build upon throughout the entire year. So really, when we take a look, one of our main goals is that students have the ability to explore their strengths, and that self-discovery is very, very important. And they really want to see how they can make a lasting impact in their school, their community, and their world. So when we take a look at college and career, it really can be a large endeavor, which really starts with reflecting on yourself and knowing who you are as a learner. What kind of learning styles and interests and passions do you have? It takes time to know your management skills. What type of time management do you need? And what type of jobs connect to those different times as well? The social skills go into it. To be a 21st century learner, you have to really be great at cooperative learning and having a really good emotional sense and empathy towards others. How can you work with others in groups and come to consensus? What are post-secondary options are available for you? Career opportunities and clusters. There's many things to talk about what careers are available and what speakers are there. And I think we see that quite often, to know that here's somebody that has a job and they're going to come in and tell you a little bit about it to see if you're interested. But it also can go into career clusters. Whether you're interested in architecture and construction, information technology, marketing, business, agriculture. And we have the Ohio Means Jobs website, which is really, really thorough, where students can have the ability to go through it and match themselves to a cluster. So it is really great to kind of hear opportunities and hear meetings and speakers from all different areas. But once they really know where they're interested, how do we then focus that into their cluster model where they can get deeper information within where maybe they're aligning? Also, not just through college and career, but there's the money management and how the students, with the reality and the responsibility and the restraints of money, how does that play a role in their development as a student? So college career and career studies can really be deep and impactful. And it's really important to outline those most important parts and figure out how we can spread that so the students have multiple opportunities to learn about this and to work with others. Our SEL programming, which we've talked about how important it is that our students are humans first and they're feeling comfortable when they walk in our doors. You know, it also falls, and I say that it falls along under our counseling type of standards, but it falls under all of our responsibilities as the teachers and instructors and staff members that get to see them on a daily basis. And truly, when it comes down to the counselors, they do collaborate and envision a plan for a comprehensive program that is not only responsive, but is preventive, and it aligns with all the school and the district goals and missions. So this year, we've had the opportunity to look at different programs, but really we want to make sure that our students have access to what they need and they have the resources, like I said, that are not just responsive. We have the ability now to be preventative for our students because we really were able to take a lot of feedback on what our students need. So some of the programs that we were looking at this year, Life Skills, Second Step, Fly 5, these are different programs that are out there that do make it really accessible to start to create and develop a program that we know our students will be able to receive. Some of the ideas go around themes and build lessons in. So I just put a few examples in there for you. Some of the topics can be mindsets and goals, how to recognize bullying and harassment, thoughts, emotions, and decisions, and maybe managing relationships and conflicts. So with all these different programs, you're going to get themes that are very similar to that. And having a schedule that we're proposing provides us the opportunity to take those lessons into the classroom on a regular basis. So for example, with our advisories, I know at the middle school, we can definitely cluster those and we can set aside 1 week a month for 7th grade or 1 week a month for 8th grade. And this provides time for our counselor to get in and do small groups. We know that we want to make sure that we have these conversations with our students, but to have a more intimate classroom where maybe there's only 20 students, built for the opportunities to engage in this type of learning and to be more open to collaborate to their peers within a classroom that's smaller. A lot of these things don't always work in these big types of assemblies. And truly with our pandemic right now, we can't even function with having a big assembly like that. So having the ability with having these built-in types of times allows us to have access of counselors and team leaders and other those that are very passionate about that to go into the classroom, which also provides the opportunity for our teachers to hear the same messages and be able to share those with our students as well. Mike, I think you went too far. There we go. Thank you. And with our response to intervention, we have looked at some things this year as our LLI or our number rules, certain programming for our students. We know that we have a tiering system for our students when they need support, but also those tiers can be broken in half. Some of our students just need extra time. They need it taught a little bit differently again. They need maybe some smaller groups or one-on-one, and some actually need some more targeted instruction on a certain concept. Having this built-in time allows our students to get exactly what they need at whatever level they need and to move flexibly within that. They may need more targeted instruction on a certain topic, and they may need just more class and cooperative practice. So having the ability to close the gap and progress monitor for our students that fall in all the different levels, whether they're extending or practicing, we have now time to provide that for our students. This also provides us time to have future flexibility for tasters. We've talked about at the high school what their flexible learning model could look like, and Mr. Doherty will talk about that at the end, but definitely at the middle school, it does provide the opportunity in the future to provide experience and skills for consistent enrichment. It would provide us time to have exploration classes for our students, maybe a makerspace class, a journalism class, really getting the time to provide what our students are interested in. It will now be a part of the schedule that we can always add in the future as we're gaining more information from what our students and our families really want and need in our school system. So it's nice to kind of think ahead, knowing that this is the foundation that's there, that if we want to go back or add to that in the next coming years, we would be able to do so. So all of these kind of came from the idea that we are a 712 campus, but we are a high school and a middle school. And we do have the philosophies for the young adults, which that the young adolescents need this time to have teaming, interdisciplinary units, flexibility, development and service learning. And we know that the high schoolers are going to benefit from the flexibility. Knowing that we do share some rooms and share some staffs, we do have multiple components that we share, but this schedule seems to be able to continue to share what we do and meet the needs of both schools.
All right. So I'm going to take just a few minutes to talk about our flexible learning pilot. I think that most of the board members saw this last year as we started this, but we actually began this work back in the fall of 2019. We brought together a group of administrators as well as teachers from the 712 campus. And we really took some time first to define what flexible learning looked like. So for us, we decided that flexible learning was a student-centered learning approach that provides students with the appropriate tools and assets to make their own choices about their sequence and focus of their learning, as well as their own pace and in their own way in an environment that best meets their needs. So once we had flexible learning defined, we actually met as a team to discuss different ideas and concerns. So we wanted to look at how we can be flexible with time, location, projects. So we defined some of those options. There we go. We looked at some different models. So we talked about how things like portfolios would be a different way that we could flex, or online learning only, web-based learning only, maybe some mentorship. So what we really found was that this whole idea of flexible learning wasn't just a self-paced online only environment. This was something that could be combined with a lot of different options to make this really work for students. So we looked at a ton of different ways that this could make sense. After that, we decided to talk to other districts that were doing similar things to us, or similar things to what we wanted to do. So we called 4 different schools here in Ohio and 1 in PA. And we had conversations with them about what things looked like in their district, what were some of the pros, the cons, how did that work? We recorded all of those calls and we shared it out with all of our members, so those people that couldn't attend but have time to listen. And then in the spring of 2020, right before COVID hit, we started to accept applications. Proposals came in, we began to review those, and then obviously COVID hit and we kind of pressed pause on everything. So we decided that now that we're coming through all that we've come through, looking at the schedule for next year, it was time to relook at this idea. So we threw the proposal back out to the high school teachers and said, now that you know what you know from everything you've seen this year, what options, what flexible learning proposals might you want to look at for the coming year? So we had a total of, I want to say it was 8 or 9 proposals that we looked at. I put a couple of examples here. So alpha period, for example, where students would meet 3 to 5 times a week prior to first period. So they would actually come into the building prior to first period and meet. On those days when they're not meeting, that could be individual or work days where they work on their project, or it could be individual meeting with the teacher. And it gives them a ton of individualized instruction time. So our teachers can meet with kids on a one-on-one basis and really get that conversation going about where they want to see their learning go. Another example from the English 12, Honors English 11 area is they would meet as a group 1 day a week all together, and then smaller groups on alternating days for the rest of the week. So again, looking at how we could focus that learning, break kids down into smaller groups with it, where the teachers would have time to really spend meaningful time with their students. So some of the other courses that were proposed were world language, CCP English, creative writing, etc. All of them had a very similar approach, meeting with kids on some days, not meeting with them on others, and giving them time to work on their projects. So
Right,
from
can I just ask you, I'm confused about the middle one. English 12 and Honors English 11, meaning both classes meet 1 day a week together, or as an English 12 class, all their students meet 1 day? And then how many times a week are the smaller groups getting together for in-person instruction, and what are they doing on the days when they're not?
Okay, so on this one, it was proposed for both English 12 and Honors 11, not to meet together, but just proposed as for both of those classes.
Okay.
So they would meet together one day a week as a group. English 12 would meet, Honors English 11 would meet. And then on the other days, what the teacher was considering was bringing the kids, like half the kids in to meet while the other half worked on their individual projects.
So splitting the class in half, I
Yep.
was picturing like 5 groups and thinking, how are you gonna, okay,
No.
that makes sense to me. Okay.
Yeah, and a lot of the like world language and creative writing, English, all of those had a very similar approach where it was, all the kids X number of days a week, and then a smaller portion of the kids on other days so that they had time to meet and kind of go through those various lessons. So we did talk about potential constraints. So, one, if there's a student who's just not performing well, teachers need to identify that threshold at which, okay, this isn't working for you and we need to move you into more of a traditional class. 2, it had to work in constraints with the new master schedule. 3, we had to make sure that parents were going to be notified with clear expectations on how the class was going to run and when the students weren't expected to be there. So we're going to use Remind, which is a technology we're already currently using to make sure that parents are kept informed of when their kids need to be there and when they aren't there. And last but not least, we want to make sure that we were covering the attendance policy, making sure that both parents and the high school office were notified when kids weren't expected to be in the building. It's not to say that they couldn't come in, they could be working in the library, et cetera, but depending on how the class is run, there may be a time when they wouldn't need to be in. So that's the flexible learning pilot in kind of a nutshell. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Asher to kind of wrap it all up, and then you guys can ask any questions.
So when we look at, and I will say with some of the flexible learning, some of it may shift depending on the bell schedule. So, knowing when they can bring larger groups in or smaller groups in, some of our teachers were waiting for kind of what this final bell schedule would look like before they came up with those specifics. We've seen a lot of positives from this year, and so we really want to push. We really want to push those forward and see what we can do. And as we evaluated kind of the time spent on instruction, time spent on social emotional learning, we know that we have to make some decisions and really look at our opportunity costs. So we can't fit all of these external programs that we know we need in a traditional schedule. And we also know, even as we looked at our student achievement data this year, our SAT data that came back, our students have been successful. And we have not seen a dip as far as standardized achievement is concerned. We haven't seen a dip in those scores. So that also let us know that we have some flexibility and that we can look at our instructional time, not so much as quantity, but quality. And also looking at our programming as what are the things that are important to us. So if we want to be able to support students through social emotional learning, we have to be able to provide that and have time during the day. If we want to be able to provide more programming for college and careers, we want to be able to provide that in the day. So we found a way where, as Layla said earlier, we can really hone into what those middle school philosophies are, but we also can hone into what we know is also important for our high school students. And so looking at this as that next step of evaluation and an ability to be flexible and innovate, this schedule really felt like it met all of our needs. And I know that was a lot of information.
It's a lot of information. You've done a lot of work and clearly leveraging some great learning that's happened, taking the positive out of what we've experienced the past year. My caution would be to not try and do too much at one time, because I think everybody also needs to catch their breath. It's the blended learning layer that I get a little concerned about, because I think it's going to be an adjustment for parents too, especially with freshmen and sophomores of, well, they say they don't have to be in class, but so that's one, just, I would go slow. I might even set those classes up, but start the blended approach in the second quarter or something along those lines. And then my other piece of advice is, I think our website needs to be adjusted to facilitate real time so that you click on the building and the first thing you see is today's schedule and tomorrow's schedule, very clearly spelled out as much as you can humanly spell it out, so that someone who's never looked at their kid's schedule before will know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. Because that's one of the concerns that I see is, and I think you guys have done everything you can within your power to communicate through newsletters and, you know, call outs and all this stuff, but that seems to be confusing more so for parents than for students, I think. So that would be helpful.
No, I think that is absolutely great feedback, and that's the you know, finding better ways to communicate you know, what's happening on each specific day. That is, you know, as we've tried different formats to the newsletter, absolutely. But being able to have that, I think, very accessible, especially when there might be a day off in the week and we would see a schedule shift. Those are the times where we see that you know, definitely become a little more challenging. You know, we've also talked to as far as open campus and what makes sense for certain grade levels. So we know that we would like to keep open campus for sure with our 11th and 12th grade students. We are having discussions about 10th grade. You know, I operate under the idea that, you know, 98% of our students are going to do all of the things that they need to be doing at all the times. And we really want to make rules for the 98% of students rather than for the 2 that might veer off of path a little bit. So evaluating what would kind of make sense for our 10th grade students, and that may be a tiered approach. So maybe it's not open campus that first semester, but then maybe it's open campus second semester. We do know that with freshman students, we want them on campus. So during Tiger period, during lunch periods, we do want our 9th grade students with us as we work to develop those executive functioning skills.
Monica, Layla, thank you so much. That was fantastic. And Mike, it was really interesting. And I can tell that a ton of work went into this, obviously. And especially the idea of trying to plan for 12th graders and 7th graders and meet their needs and balance that. I mean, you think about the difference developmentally, it's huge. I have 2 questions, just sort of logistical questions. The first is, how do you fit everybody in the same room for lunch? Like, do you have enough physical space to do that, the lunch?
So with open campus over, and because that lunch period is 50 minutes and is very similar to the time that we've provided this year, it's the same model that we have for lunch now when we're looking at spacing. And, you know, most of our students leave campus for lunch. We were definitely, when we transitioned from hybrid to all in, that was a concern because initially we utilized part of the PAC lobby. But what we found also with our enrollment going down a little bit, that we do have the space capacity for it.
Okay. And then my second question is, this is very true and certainly been true in my house over the break or over the quarantine. Everybody loves that little bit of extra sleep when they can run downstairs and just log on and don't have to get up 45 minutes earlier and get ready for school. Was there any thought given, and maybe you answered this with Excel Tech, but was there any thought given to making that Tiger period on Monday, Thursday, and Friday first period? So kids who didn't need to be there for Tiger period could have that opportunity to sleep in a little bit?
We've talked about a lot of different options with that. Part of the reason why we looked at it middle of the day is because then, you know, once they're in the building,
right,
we have them in the building. And so if we do, you know, want to really kind of keep them there for intervention, we can do that. You know, it's easier to provide interventions to students that are already there. We also talked about what it would look like at the end of the day as well, because then that gives more flexibility for music. So I think is when we look at the placement of Tiger period, I know that we're certainly open to evaluating where that's placed on the schedule, and was one where there were a lot of different feelings about it, and quite frankly, I could go in multiple directions of where that fits.
I would say though too, knowing this year and some of our different programming, it's been phenomenal to have the high school students be able to come back and work with our middle school students. When we talk about college and career, it's really great to give 7th grade exposures to see what does high school look like first, what kind of college and career are they exploring and what are they thinking, and to have them run different lessons. Our guidance advisory council used multiple times this year to have the students come down, and it was a little hard because our tiger periods didn't have the same time. So by building that in, and for students who are even working towards volunteer hours, we'd be able to give that to the students if they wanted to come back and work with the middle school students.
That's great. Thank you.
Gotcha. One question. So just to clarify, so at least to begin with, it sounds like you're opening the door a bit to 9th and 10th grade, but basically everybody but 11th and 12th grade would be on campus all day, all week long. Is that right? And then it's 11 and 12 that would be out, for lunch, that can leave for lunch, and they can do that Tuesday end of day, Wednesday beginning of the day, right?
Correct. And open campus also when we look at study hall. So if a student has a study hall scheduled with open campus, they would be able to, obviously like we did this year with parent permission, not have to report to study hall, but if they had that in their schedule, they would be able to go. The other thing that we also talked about is, we tend to, because we have kids that want to pursue so many different interests, when we looked at, some of the challenges of having students have the ability to schedule more classes in their schedule. If we have that over the 2 lunch periods and then those 3 tiger periods, you could actually have students schedule classes in both 4th and 5th period. They could eat lunch during that tiger period if it's middle of the day. And then because we also have that lunch scheduled in the middle of the day on Tuesday and Wednesday separate from that 4th and 5th period, it does give some of our students who want to explore more coursework the flexibility to do that and still have lunch in their schedule, which is really, really important. Whenever a student wants to pursue an extra class and they're debating that lunch, I tend to really work to talk them out of it because I want them to have a break in the day, but this gives them the opportunity to do both.
Gotcha. And speaking of that break in the day, so let's say the Monday, Thursday, Friday, how exactly does lunch work? Because obviously it's not implicitly clear on the schedule.
It will work as it did in years past. So freshmen and sophomores, they would be scheduled, let's say if a student had a 4th period lunch, they might have lunch during the first half of the period and then a study hall in the second half of the period. Or they could have study hall in the first half of the period and then lunch in the second half of the period. And then juniors and seniors would have both periods for lunch.
And at the middle school, the open campus, it would be a closed campus. We'd keep our middle schoolers with us during the day. Our lunches would work very similarly, where our 7th graders would eat during 4th period and our 8th graders would eat during 5th period. That gives them more space than this year to be able to spread out. And they would still be able to have their recess option. On the block day, they would all be eating at the same so we would do what we did this year. While one grade level is eating, the other grade level is in their recess, and then they would flip after that half hour. So we'd still be able to spread apart as well.
Just going off of what Ms. Asher said about our highly driven students who would rather pursue additional academics than eat lunch, that's another concern I have about I think the creativity of the alpha period before school, taking an additional, is great. And I generally don't espouse a paternalistic approach, but I think you need to put some thought around how are we going to prevent students from now saying that they can handle 9 classes a semester, because they are very driven and peer pressure plays a role and they want to do more and more.
Yeah, we did talk about that, and those are real. And we've done this in the past. I mean, there's kids that are eating between classes or in a classroom, and we've made those arrangements. But it's not something we want to promote, encourage, and push. But we kind of want to be able to adapt to those rare opportunities where it makes sense for the student. maybe they're doubling up on a math because math clicked late for them and they need to catch up, or you've got a real talented art student that just would like another elective there. So there are situations that make sense, but your point is very well taken. You don't want to add additional stressors on and kind of keep up with the Joneses kind of scheduling competition. So that's, we've had that dialogue, and I think we're going to be acutely aware of that.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. Zeus is a real traditionalist, so he he gets very confused with these schedules, these mixed schedules. But just back to that. So like for the lunch, that's the only feedback that I heard. I was kind of pulling my people before the meeting, and that like some of those split lunches, I guess that gets pretty challenging if you've got like a split lunch in study hall. It's like it's not enough time for study hall, and it's really not enough time for a break.
I think it's great also that you are now sort of protecting the tiger time, that that the kids can plan for that. I've heard from people, and I know in our house as well, they treat that as study hall, or they know they're going to get help, or they know in advance that they want to use that time a certain way. And then when it's used for programming, it throws a wrench in what they had planned for the week. So I think that's great that there's now time that you can use specifically for that. Another stress reducer, hopefully.
Yeah, but fantastic job overall, kind of integrating everything all together, and yeah, like I said, pulling the people that I have here that know a lot more about the schedule because they live it more than I do. They like the combined approach. They really like that because they said, well, I asked them, which would you rather have? Would you rather have block or traditional? And they're like, well, we kind of like this about this one, this about this one. So the combined approach, they really appreciate it.
I can see you guys did a tremendous amount of work. I can't imagine how many iterations you had to go through to come up with the plan right now. And I'm sure like weeks when there's like a Tuesday with no school, that's just gonna mean a Thursday is a block day or something. But so I like what Sharon asked or suggested, maybe, every day what it's gonna be, because I think knowledge is power. But thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? I know this was a long one, but I will tell you I started in the high school, and so it's been, I won't admit how many years. We talked about potential block hybrid schedules along the way, and open campus was, well, the kids will never be able to handle it, or the length of the period, fear that we weren't prepared to operate in that. COVID put us in where we didn't really have a choice, and we had to do these things. And I think the opportunity on the other side is going to really make an impact on the high school and the middle school as well. And I think everyone, in full disclosure, knows that this is going to be a learning process. So as we move forward, it'll have to tweak and change. And maybe part of the answer to your question, Phil, is we do segment in the open campus to 10th grade, and now the number's smaller, so you've got a full period you can put kids down there. So this will evolve and change. I think from having direction now on the schedule, the blended learning piece, will get more definition from those teachers. We will provide that to the board as an update, so you have that information. But I think it's a huge step forward for the district, with tremendous opportunity moving forward. And thanks to administrators and the teachers that were involved in putting all this together. And I should put out that we did run through this presentation with Dr. Penzarski as well earlier this week, and she's kind of aware of the change as we move forward. So thank you for your time tonight. And it sounds to me like we're moving forward. So I appreciate that. And that would conclude my report. And Layla and Monica, if you so desire, I think you can check out for the night. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for all of your time tonight. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Hunt, and definitely would want to go back to the first item on your report, and for sure express the board, my personal appreciation for the teachers for everything that they have done, and for our PTO organizations. They're all PTO is an incredible support organization for the school district, and certainly, through the pandemic and every day, we appreciate the extraordinary efforts of the teachers and the results that they bring to our school district. So thank you for expressing that. Moving on. So now we have community audience participation. I was not contacted by anybody wanting to speak to the board tonight. Ms. Brudenell, were you?
I was not.
Okay. Dr. Hunt?
I was not.
Okay, fantastic. Well, but if anybody does in the future desire to address the board, this is the opportunity that presents itself at every one of our meetings to do so. So just contact one of the three of us ahead of time and we can get you on the agenda. All right, moving on, we have consent agenda. If I could have a motion for consent agenda item 7A through, it's a long one. Still going. 7U.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, unless there's anything in here specific, Dr. Hunt, that you want to call our attention to?
I would just call your attention to item C. We typically look to our graduates and or students to fill summer labor positions. And Mr. Wolfter let me know there are still 4 more out there. If you have anyone that would be home and interested in helping out with summer labor, please send them our way. And the only, I think, thing that I would draw to the attention of the board is item EU, which is an addendum to our agreement with the Western Reserve ESC. We had a couple, I think 2 or 3 additional special education students where transition services were needed. So we're adding some days to that contract. Typically we contract for 10 days for the year. I would point out that this is kind of an up to 10 days. And speaking with Jen Banco, I think we'll probably use all of them. But we needed to add additional services for those students.
Gotcha. And just a question about that 7C. So that's, any age requirements, any?
Don't hold me to this, but I believe 16 or older. And if not, I'll probably get a text from Chris telling me differently here in any second.
Right. So 16 or older, $10 an hour from just the end of school. So like beginning of June until like through into August.
Correct. We've actually kept some of them on into September if they, haven't gone back to college or something like that. So there's available beyond, the return to school.
Gotcha. And can be doing things from cleaning to
furniture making, working outside. The whole gamut.
Gotcha. Okay. Any other discussion of these items? All right. Seeing none. Ms. Brudenell, if you'd please take the roll.
Mr. Rankin,
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mrs. Bros,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole.
Yes.
All right. Fantastic. Next up, superintendent's recommendations. If I could have a motion for item 8A through 8H. Not everybody at once.
All right, I'll do it. So moved.
Thank you, Mary Kay. And a second.
I'll second.
All right. Thank you, Lori. Dr. Hunt.
Okay, thank you. Item A is the acceptance of the resignation of Pam Fox. Pam has worked in the school district and transportation department for many years. In fact, Dr. Penowski and I were out at the transportation department today and had a chance to extend my gratitude to her in person. She's not only been a incredible employee, helping out at both secretary and driving in the transportation department, but she served on the executive board for OPSI for many, many years. And I always found her to be extremely fair, certainly represented her folks and advocated for them, but understood the importance of what we're trying to do with kids. Pam is going to jump on a plane and head out west to Montana and enjoy herself. So I want to thank her for everything she has done for the school district. She will certainly be missed. Item B on the agenda is a update to the job description for technology integration coach. This is the position currently held by Nancy Kevern. If you kind of reviewed the two side by side, we are pushing this person a little bit more towards the Makerspace Labs to provide some additional support to access those from our regular ed teachers. So that is really the change in that description. So we're asking the board to approve that update for that position. Then items.
I'm sorry, can I ask you a quick question about B?
Yeah, absolutely.
I just am trying to catch up here a little bit with past conversations. We have two technology jobs? I know Nancy Kevern's leaving, and then there's another technology position that went unfilled that was someone who did support for Mike. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And are we filling both, or are we trying to combine them into one, or how are we treating those two positions?
No, we part of the reductions prior to the levy was kind of the break fix person within Mike's department. So that position was riffed. This is really Nancy's position that is being replaced. I do not believe we are looking at additional staffing this year. Mike and I reviewed a plan with Dr. Penzarski, looking at that kind of a 2-year plan to reintegrate staff and redeploy some of this work. We also have a gentleman in the innovation lab now that's supporting Mike with some of the break fix. So this will be the only recommendation coming at you for this spring.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. And items C through G, I think I would make the general comment that we always have, we're very fortunate that a lot of people want to come to Chagrin Falls. So we have a tremendous pool of candidates on an annual basis. And by the time that these individuals get to you, they have been through multiple rounds of interviews. They have taught lessons in front of administrators to students. They have met with me, met with Dr. Penzarski yesterday, and there is some real talent coming to the district this year. So I want to commend everyone that was involved in the process, because these are very time consuming. And I want to just briefly tell you about these candidates that we're recommending that we bring on for next year. These are not additional positions. These are all replacements at this point. Grace McDivitt is going to work in the intermediate school as an intervention specialist. She actually grew up in Fairview Park, a graduate of Kent State University. She completed field experience in a wide range of settings, including teaching in Crestwood High School. In fact, when we talked to her yesterday, she was in the midst of at the school, students coming and going, extremely passionate about what she's about her interest in making a difference for young people, extremely knowledgeable in the spirit in the area of special education, and the interview team felt she just was an excellent fit for the intermediate school moving forward. Jennifer Nagano. Jennifer has over 20 years of experience teaching math and computer science in a variety of educational settings. Graduated with honors from Case Western Reserve University with a BS in computer engineering. Most recently, she's been teaching at Western Reserve Academy, where she also coordinated math contests and has served as a student advisor. I think her capabilities in terms of computer programming, knowledgeable of AP, just make her an excellent fit for this really important position in the district, as Carolyn has certainly set the bar very high. So we're excited that Jennifer will be joining us. Cassidy Reed will be joining us as the new marching band director. Cassidy is a musician, educator, and advocate for music education, really a native to Buffalo, New York, and currently teaching in Rochester. She's finishing up her master's in music and teaching and learning at the Eastman School of Music, graduated Bachelor of Master's Education in Trumpet at BW in 2019. She's presented at the New York School of Music Association Conference, specific to gender and equity in music conference, and the Eastman School of Music, and editor of the International Women's Bass Conference Journal. She came across as extremely knowledgeable, and I think is really excited about the opportunity to take over the program, work with our parents, organizations, and our current staff to continue the excellent program that has been started here at Chagrin Falls. Next recommendation is our RTI tutors at the 7-12. We're looking at this a little differently than we have in the past. These two individuals are specific to content areas. So we'll have a math expert and an ELA expert to work with our students, our tier 2 A and B students on the 7-12 campus. First is Nicole. She's a middle childhood education major with a focus on math and science, completed her undergraduate at Kent State, where she first majored in health science and minored in psychology. She then attended John Carroll University to get her master's in education. She's currently finishing a one-year long-term position with Solon Schools, had a long-term position at Kenston as well, and actually served as a long-term substitute at Chagrin Falls in 7th grade as a math teacher, in which time, she made a great impression on students, parents, and staff. So we're excited, and she's excited that there's not a long-term sub in front of her title. Then Caitlin McPheron. Caitlin is a Kentucky native, born and raised in Somerset, Kentucky, graduate of Eastern Kentucky University with a BA in English. She'll focus on the ELA side. She's got a master's in teaching ELA. She's 2 years teaching experience in Kentucky at the middle school level, and has completed long-term sub position at Chagrin Falls this year as she's moved up with, I think, her boyfriend who's working at the Cleveland Clinic. So again, a very brief overview of their vitas and qualifications, but really a talented pool of people as we kind of transition and staff up for next year. Last recommendation is H, and that is extension of the administrative contract for the individuals stated on the agenda.
What's the term of the extensions? Is it just 2 year? I forget what standard is.
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, 2 years is standard. And this is they will be entering in their last year of their current contract, and this is an extension of 2.
I just would echo your comments about the work to bring in the right people. We have some big shoes to fill in the district, and it looks like you've found some really amazing people to come in and continue to lead the way. I'm curious if Dr. Pinzarski had anything in particular to say about our new band director, since that's definitely an area of interest for her.
I think, I don't want to speak for her. I know she's out there listening, but I think she, along with me, she was actually in my office as we were kind of doing these interviews together, and really just amazed at the talent and quality. And we always get that, but it was very noticeable, probably just because we're, when you're talking about the marching band program and computer science program, every hire is important, but there's kind of big shoes to fill in those arenas. And we just felt, I think we both felt walking away, there's a lot of talent and excitement that will continue the excellence that's been kind of established.
That's great.
I
Thank
would just
you.
like to add that it's great that there's another trumpet player coming on board and joining.
All right, sounds great. Any other discussion? Okay, Ms. Brudno, if you'd take the roll, please.
Mr. Rankin,
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mrs. Bros,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole.
Yes.
right, fantastic. Ms. Brudno, if, well, I guess if I could have a recommendation, or if I could have a motion for 9A and 9B.
So moved.
Thank you, Catherine. Second,
Second.
thank you. Ms. Brudno,
Thank you. I'm trying to pull up the agenda very quickly. It logged me out.
Wait,
I
Phil,
have the
did you
same
do
problem
9A
about
and 9B
20
or 9A through C?
B only, C is part of the template when they create a meeting and they just forgot to remove it. I actually texted Jill about that today and said, did you have something to put on there? She did not. Okay, and I apologize. I was, who made the motion? Thank you.
Catherine, motion, Mary Kay, second.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm going to share here because the first item is reports.
And Sharon, you may have an old copy. If you refresh, I think C is gone.
Yeah, I did remove it this afternoon when I got back. Okay. So the first report here is the same. We're talking about March here. I realize we're a little bit late on these. I did not get these done in time for the second meeting of April. We were transitioning to the new system, and actually I just got the go ahead when I got back this evening that we are operating solely on the new system now. So some of the bumps are out of the way now. It's just the learning curve of learning the new system. So anyway, that's why we're a meeting late on these. So we're talking about March here. Actual numbers here, taxes are a little higher than what we had anticipated, only because originally, we weren't really quite sure what COVID was going to do. I think I was a little bit more pessimistic than what actually happened. Taxes are done now. You will see in this property tax allocation here that we'll still get that amount in. That'll be our homestead and rollback money. Nothing significant on expenditures. I'll go through the expenditure report, but we are still trending up for the year compared to what we were. Again, several reasons behind that. Our expenditures are down. I apologize for my voice. I don't know what's going on with me. Expenditures are down and revenues are up. So that combination of that is really great for us. Looking at revenue right now, again, property taxes pretty much done. PUP taxes pretty much done. Unrestricted grants, that's our state revenue, right about where it should be. Restricted grants, this is one of those things that just comes in at the end of the year. It's typically almost everything in that line is going to be our catastrophic costs. And we did just finish filing all of that. So we should get that in June. Don't have an idea of how much it's going to be yet, only because that's the one that is determined by the entire state and how much the entire state submits for, not just us. So we get a portion of what we submit for. And then other financing sources, we're over what we initially estimated there. Part of that was that big BWC refund, or not refund, the COVID relief money that they sent earlier in the year. So revenues are looking great. Expenditures, if you look at where we're at in the year compared to what we have spent, we're doing fantastic. Supplies and materials, a lot of this is because we had estimated for COVID expenditures again, and then we were able to move some things to some federal expenditures. And I will show you, actually prepared a brief report on just the federal that we have spent on all the COVID money. So I'll show you why some of that is and how that got moved. Purchase services is a little bit lower than what we would anticipate at this point. A lot of times these are contract payments for special ed situations and things like that kind of come later in the year. So that probably will jump up by the end of the year. But again, we are down. as demonstrated by this graph right here. So you can see our expenditures are down from the previous 2 years, which is great. Self-insurance fund, we are up to a balance of $400,000. That's great. You can see the variance each month. The variance this month was not quite as high as the last 2 months, and that's just because that run out in January and February, a lot of those claims that would have been paid in January and February were for items that occurred in the previous calendar year, which were on the prior plan before we went to self-insurance. So this is probably closer to what we're going to see for the rest of the year. I wouldn't expect it to jump up to here. I'd like to be wrong on that, but guess we'll see. Monthly report for all of the funds. Couple negative balances here. Again, you know, these are expected. This is the district managed. This is mostly athletics. We did decide that we're going to run everything through the 300 fund. So we're waiting until the end of the year. We'll make that transfer from the general fund over to the 300 fund to cover that negative balance. And then we'll have a better idea of what athletics are actually costing us. And then the federal grant funds, these are all reimbursement grants. So we spend first and then they give us the money later. Bank reconciliation, just the typical adjustments for the month. Some things that happened at the end of the month that didn't actually hit until after month end. So those are just some carrying adjustments there. Quick picture of where our money is. Most of it is still in Star, Ohio. Interest rates are not doing anything at the moment. So we're holding our money in Star, Ohio until we need it, then moving it over to the operating accounts. If you want to know where the $4 million is that we have in actual investments, here they are all listed with KeySIP numbers and such. And then this, I've had a couple questions from board members about the federal expenditures for the COVID relief monies that we've received. We've received a couple different sources. Number one is the CARES grant. This was the one that we needed to spend first. Initially, that had to be spent by December, and then they extended it. So this one we kind of spent first. The temperature scanners here, that's the equipment line there. And then everything else we just kind of started using for all of our supplies. We did have one item of instructional supplies that was specific to COVID. It was an online subscription that had our children been in the building, we would not have needed to purchase. So it was allowable under this grant. So we went ahead and coded that to that grant. And then the rest of this is all sanitizer, masks, supplies and things that we needed at the beginning of the year to get moving. Next grant is the CARES broadband connectivity grant. This one was separate, was received separately and is reported separately. This is for the additional Wi-Fi and access points that we installed at the beginning of the year. I know you can get our internet now in the parking lot. So that's what that was for. This CARES money through the village was used for, this was money that they received from the federal government, and then we received it from the village. And we use that on the desk shields. So that's an equipment item.
And that's Chagrin Falls Village.
Yes. Yes, we were very grateful that they were willing to do that. And that was worked out well because the amount that they were, that they had available for us kind of coincided with this purchase. So it worked out really great. And then there's the ESSER grant. So this is the first round of ESSER money. We have only used it right now for supplies. So we've been using it for sanitizing supplies, as far as cleaning sanitizing supplies, and then hand sanitizers as well. masks and plexiglass and that type of thing. This one, we do still have $23,000 available for that grant right now for this fiscal year. This is only the first round of ESSER. So the ESSER 2, we've not received anything yet. We have allocation and it's set out there. That'll be for next fiscal year. And then there's talk of ESSER 3 as well. So I'll kind of keep updating this. I don't think I'm going to show it to you every month. I think it might be a little overload on it, but we are keeping track of all of this. And this is why some of these items that we had initially thought we were going to have to spend out of the general fund didn't hit our general fund, because we were able to utilize these additional sources that kind of came throughout the year.
Actually, I might have missed whether you said it or not, but do you expect to spend that 23,000 remaining in the ESSER?
Oh, absolutely. We're not going to leave it sitting on the table.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Yes, absolutely. Actually, if it gets to a point where we're toward the end of the year and we haven't spent it, I believe Chris has in his head what he's using it for. But if he hasn't, we can recode things. We've definitely spent it. And if I need to move expenditures from one fund over to the federal fund, just so that we don't leave that out, we will definitely spend it. We will definitely get that money that has been allocated to us. And that is allowable. That's not something that we wouldn't be allowed to do. We recode expenditures all the time. So.
You've got a large, the learning labs this summer that we're putting on for those at-risk students are there. And
so right now, some of that is going to be used from this ESSER, and then our second round starts at the next fiscal year. We're going to use a lot more of that, because now that we don't need, the equipment's pretty much, it's done. We've got what we need. And then the sanitizers and the safety supplies and things, going into this in the beginning, supply was so low that the cost was astronomical for some of these things. So we didn't know if it was going to stay that way. So we kind of estimated, thinking we were going to be spending all of this money on these things. And now that we're kind of into it, we've got a year of COVID under our belt, which sounds really weird to say, but we do. We know a little bit better, and we now are going to have more money to use on things to mitigate learning loss, and rather than just the facilities and just getting, the building safe for our students. We're there, we've got that. Now we need to start addressing the other effects of COVID with this money. So. Any other questions? Okay, so that was item A, and then item B is the contract with Ray & Associates to prepare our financial statements and our CAFR. They're the company who did it prior to, or they've always done it. And then this is actually, ignore everything I just said. This is not for the CAFR, this is for the audit. I'm sorry. We use them for both, which makes our lives a lot easier. This contract that you're approving tonight is for the audit. So this is the one that the state took care of. They decide who gets it and all of that. You have the memos. And then we also have a contract with them for the actual CAFR. They prepare the CAFR as well. 2 separate contracts, 2 separate teams, 2 separate completely independent divisions of one big company. So I'm recommending your approval of these items.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion?
Yeah, you might want to change the item B, because it says contract renewal for financial statements and reports. So you might want to change it to write audit in there.
Okay, hold on one second and let me look this up, because now that I got back from vacation 4 hours ago.
Right, I know.
So hold on, I may have just completely said that exactly backwards. I'm so sorry. I did. This one,
Okay.
I'm sorry. I woke up in Florida this morning is my excuse. Okay, so this is for the CAFR. We approved the audit one at the last meeting. I'm
Okay.
getting them confused. This one is for the CAFR, so they do the conversion and they prepare the CAFR, and then the audit team, which is a separate team, does the audit. They're two separate contracts. So you are approving this is for the CAFR. I am very sorry.
So is the right thing attached? Because I
Yes.
thought it looked like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, the
Yeah, it's
attachments for
on
the
there.
CAFR.
Okay.
Yeah, the one at the last meeting, that was the audit.
Okay.
Any other
Sorry.
discussion? Okay, Ms. Brudno, if you'd please take the roll.
See if I can do that right. Mr. Rankin,
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mrs. Bros,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole.
Yes.
All right, moving on to other business. I would like to make sure I know that Dr. Pensarski emailed out to the board today kind of a summary of her integration activities with Dr. Hunt over the last few days. That's a very nice summary of that. And also she included several of her days that she plans to be having transition days. So obviously, not violating sunshine laws, but, it'd be a great opportunity for single or two members of the board to grab some time with Dr. Pensarski over any of those days, lunch, dinner, something like that, to be able to get to know her a little bit personally and figure out what we can do to help her integrate into the school system and into the village, or beyond the village into the school district. So just would encourage you, I'm sure you've probably all read it, but just wanted to reinforce the fact to read that and feel free to email her back. I think it was a good focused email. I love those.
Yeah, and if you could respond to that piece, we're kind of holding up scheduling her transition day activities around your schedule. So if you can, get back on that, that would be helpful.
Okay, great. Anybody else? Any other business? All right.
The only thing I would put on the horizon for the board about the transition is we've had some conversations. I had a call with Dr. Hunt and Dr. Pensarski this week about utilizing a board retreat when she's joined the district to just begin having some of the conversations and getting on the same page about the priorities for this year. And so I don't know if we want to go about beginning to organize, throw some dates out to save some dates on our calendars. If we could ask Barb to maybe find some common time, or how long we want for that, but we should begin thinking about that.
Would like me to ask Barb to reach out to each of you on schedules over June and July?
Bill, what do you think?
Yeah, it'd probably be good to grab a date. I mean, the earlier the better.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great, Bob. Thanks.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Next meeting, Wednesday, May 19th, of 2021, of course, 6 p.m. a video conference once again. I believe that now we'll have to talk about what we want to do with these, but we're at least approved through state of Ohio to go through the end of December. Not that we necessarily want to go that far. So that is our next meeting. If I could have a motion for adjournment.
Been moved.
Thank you, Catherine. Second.
I'll second.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Brudno, if you'd please take the roll.
Mr. Rankin,
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mrs. Bros,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Toole.
Yes.
All right.